button.
Okay, we're happening.
Don't delete it.
Yeah, don't lose that. That'll be...
Okay, so we're going to take it from the top.
All right, are we ready to
second.
go again here? For sure. Sounds okay, everybody's okay. Getting this close-up shot. Okay, let's try it again. Fucking talent's overheating here.
Makeup.
Makeup. Rolling?
Rolling.
All right, so please tell us who you are and what you do again.
Again?
Yes, please.
I'm Alan Bagshaw, and I'm a production manager, technical director.
And something about that shepherd thing.
And a shepherd.
And a shepherd.
And shepherd.
Sometimes they call him. He calls himself a shepherd.
Yeah, sometimes I refer to myself as a shepherd. And that's what I tend to do.
And what about your partner over here?
And we are partners.
Mr. Bethel.
We're partners in Bagshaw and Associates. That's the company. And my name is Mark Bethel, and I am a production manager, technical director, and stage manager. And we coordinate stuff. We don't really do anything. We actually just facilitate other people doing stuff.
All right, let's pretend for a minute that you're at a family dinner, and somebody at the dinner, who's your family, asks you, what is it that you do again, Alan? Good question, right?
Yeah, I've had that happen.
What do you tell your family when they ask you what you do? And I know all of us, most of our families still don't know what we do. But what do you tell your family? How do you explain it to somebody?
Oh, what do you tell them? Well, it depends on who it is and how much they know.
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad.
What do you tell Mom and Dad? How do you explain what you do to Mom and Dad?
I'm still doing the same thing I was doing 25 years ago.
Which is what?
Which is coordinating the lighting, the scenic, the video, the audio, the labor for business meetings, for parties, for press events, and I don't do weddings.
What about you, Mark?
And you know what? I tell them I'm an organizer. Basically, that's what we do, is we're organizers. We organize people and things. And when I'm actually explaining in more detail, it's like anything that's a live event we'll do, except weddings. Yeah. And I've actually done a wedding too. So
the only time we advertised in the Yellow Pages, we got nothing but wedding calls.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
So no Yellow Page advertising.
No Yellow Pages.
The last of the year.
Yeah. So,
tell me, give me a little brief description of your background. Where do you come from? How did you get in the business?
Started in high school. Started at Berkeley High School, which has a community theater, 3,500 seat theater. And at the time, Bill Graham was doing 1 or 2 concerts a month at the community theater. And I was on the student stagehand group, and we were 1-to-1 with the IATSE. So I started working rock and roll shows in 1970, 71, and went from high school into Bill Graham's organization. And when he had FM Productions before Mendenhall came into the picture. And we worked at Winterland for a while and did shows, went down to Ontario Speedway with Leon Russell and some others. And then in 1974, right, Bill Graham started producing national tours. And the first one was Bob Dylan and the band in the winter of 74, and then Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young in the summer. And that was the first time anybody in the country had taken a dog down the Greenside show across country. And that was an experience.
The first real tour, huh?
It was big. It was big. Well, it was the first time outdoor stadiums. It was arenas and stadiums, and it was the first time anybody had done a stadium tour in the U.S. And I remember getting to Kansas City, and the promoter hadn't found enough scaffolding, so the stage wasn't done. The sound platforms weren't done. The sound wings weren't done. So anyway, so did that, and then a couple years later, I started working with Santana, and I worked with the Santana band for 7 years. And I floated for a while, and then I Mendenhall, and then I went back to FM, and Mendenhall was involved then, and that was the start of my corporate walk.
Rock and roll into corporate.
Rock and roll into corporate. And Mark and I were roommates back in 1974. So
All right,
he
Mr.
can tell you
Bethel,
about his past.
Jump in there.
Okay, so after I dropped out of college and moved to San Francisco, I was living on Bush Street, about 2 blocks away from Winterland. And I was painting houses when I could find work in order to pay the rent and buy food. But I spent most of my time, since it was 2 blocks away from Winterland, hanging around, going to Grateful Dead shows. And I decided that it would be a good idea. Well, I don't know if it was a good idea, but I decided it would be a better idea if I could get paid to go to these shows, or at least not have to pay to get in and that sort of thing. So I found out where FM Productions office was, went down, asked for applied for a job, and got a job as a stagehand at Winterland. And I worked as a stagehand at Winterland for a few months. The first day I worked at Winterland was a Doobie Brothers show at Winterland. And I came in at maybe 10 o'clock in the morning, unloaded trucks, set up stuff, was just basically bossed around all day. At showtime, I became an usher, a security guard usher, for the show, and I had to keep the aisles clear, and got to wear one of those blue jackets that they were called blue coats then. And after the show, I took off the blue coat and went back and helped the road crew tear down their production and load the trucks. And I was there from 10 in the morning until 2 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning. I had to buy my own dinner, which cost me $2. Because they had an in-house little thing, so I had to buy my own dinner. And for that day, I got paid $20 for that day. $20 for that day. I loved it.
When was this? What year?
Right?
1970, early 74.
$20 for the day.
$20 for the day.
And you loved it.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved
Yeah.
it. They said, "Do you want to come back?" I said, "Oh, are you kidding? Of course." So I worked at Winterland for a few months, and then around about May, I guess, after we were done loading out, it's like, they would do assignments for, when you were coming back and stuff. And they said, well, the shop needs carpenters. Is anybody here a carpenter? So, I'm a carpenter. I had never worked a table saw in my life. I basically hadn't done, I swung a hammer, never worked power tools before. I was a carpenter, no problem. And so they said, great, show up Monday morning. So I showed up at FM Productions offices on 11th Street in San Francisco, and they put me to work building road boxes. And I built road boxes and drum risers. They had a very simple way to do it. I did not cut my hand off. I didn't ruin any tools. I didn't screw up too much lumber.
What's this thing? It's
And-
a table.
We were probably working next to each other.
Yeah, he was.
I don't remember it, but we probably were.
Yeah, you
I
were
was a
probably.
carpenter then,
Yeah. And so I built stuff until for a month or so, and then they said, well, the Crosby, Stills, Nash Young tour is going out in 2 weeks. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I went out on the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young tour, and that was a 4-truck tour or 5-truck tour, something like that. And in those days, it was big budget, but it was low budget for us. So what?
Oh, it's more like 8 to 10 trucks.
It was that many trucks?
Yeah, there's one truck just for follow spots.
Oh, that's true, I guess. Anyway, we would, but we got paid, I got paid for that tour, I think, $275 a week.
Too much.
And I rode, and the way I got from place to place
110
was
bucks a week. He knew somebody. Somebody. 110.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I was getting.
Oh, maybe I was okay.
Maybe 100 and a quarter.
No, I had to have gotten more
You
than
were
that.
making less. What were you doing? You guys were on the
He
same
was an
tour.
electrician on that tour. I stacked the PA on that tour. And once again, had no idea what I was doing, but we could make it up. And I rode in the truck. That's how we got from venue to venue, is I was a passenger in one of the semis.
Yeah.
I'm sure completely illegal in retrospect. But we rode in that, and that lasted actually only a few weeks until it became, the tour was overwhelmingly, that was a huge outdoor tour. It was overwhelming for everybody involved. And within weeks, that was that same thing where Kansas City didn't have the they literally couldn't find enough scaffolding in Kansas City to build a stage.
It's never been done before.
Something of that size. There, of course, had been tours. People had played state fairs for years and years and years.
One-offs.
But one-offs, the state, this was just so much bigger. And so I did that. That tour lasted about 3 months. And as soon as I came back, they sent me out with Santana. I actually set up a big mirror for that first Santana tour. Did that for 6 weeks, came back from that. They sent me out on another 3-month tour. I came back from that. I think I had the holidays off or worked at Winterland again, and then just started doing tour after tour after tour. Did that until about 1979, until I took on more and more roles. FM Productions was a wonderful place because they had a full production capability, and if you were halfway smart, you could go from department to department if they felt that you were competent and responsible. So they let me go from stacking the PA to I became a lighting guy, became an electrician, and to this day, that's the thing that I know how to do. That's the one thing that I know how to do in this business, is I know about electricity. And so we did that, and that lasted until about 1979, until I rose up to a production manager level. Did a big, terrible tour, had to leave, needed some rest, and then began doing civic events in San Francisco, a lot of big civic events, and then that sort of transitioned into corporate, and that's what I'm doing to this day.
Tell me your favorite part of what you do. And any one of you guys can jump in whenever you want. What's your favorite part about what you do?
I like as we were saying before, I like the arbitrary nature of what we do, in the sense that it's sort of the same thing, but it's never exactly the same thing. There's always different people involved. There's always different dynamics between the client and the crew. And it's a lot of frustration, creates a lot of frustration, because you always have to learn how to work with new people, and usually as soon as you do, that's it. You spend a week with them, you learn all of the ins and outs of personalities, and then of course you never see them again, or you see them 2 years later or something.
6 months later, and you can't remember where.
And you can't remember where you saw them, yeah. But it's certainly not in any way, shape, or form a 9-to-5 job, for better or for worse, and that's kept me going. It sometimes made me want to quit, but on the other hand, I tried to have a job in the middle of all of my production experience. I actually tried to leave the business and do something else, and I did that for about 4 years. It was good. I took a lot of my rock and roll experience to do that, but it soon became unattractive in a lot of other ways. And I ended up, that business dissolved, and didn't know what else to do. And that's actually when Alan and I got back together and formed the company that we have now. And that was 12 years ago. Well, 10.
More than that?
Yeah.
89.
No, 50. Yeah, 15
19.
years and yeah.
19.
What's your favorite part, Alan?
A lot of what Mark said. I like a lot of the people that I work with. It's key. I like the fact that it's not a 9-to-5, because I don't think I could do a 9-to-5. I was ruined out of the crib with Bill Graham. And I like the fact that you might be using a lot of the same components, but it's always different. It's a different design, it's a different venue, it's a different client, different time schedule, and you complete the job. You plan it, you execute it, and you complete it. And I know a lot of people who never complete their job, and they just get frustrated, and they do the same thing day in and day out. It's the same thing. I'm just pushing.
There's a finality to it.
Pushing
for sure.
information. I'm pushing information.
Right.
And we actually get to get out. We get to travel. You know, when my kids were little, I got to get away from them. It was good. I got to sleep at night when they were just born. When the twins were born. I could go on a job site and work 16 hours and still get more rest than when I was at home with the kids. So it's good.
Along those lines, when I was out of this business for a while, I was doing retail store fixtures. And it had a lot of the same elements. We would put together things, but I would go out and I would fixture stores, and we would put stores together in shopping malls and stuff like that. And I would come home, and I would come home when I was touring with music stuff. I would come home, and it'd be really a nice feeling to get home. You have done something, and I kept coming home from these retail jobs, feeling something was wrong. Something was. It just wasn't as comforting when I came home. And one day, driving home from the airport, my wife had picked me up, and we were talking about this, and she said, "Well, I think the difference is that you didn't get to come home with the stuff that you went with." And doing these stores, we would go out very similar to a show in the sense that we would put together components and stuff, but it would stay there. It would stay in a mall in Ithaca, New York, or Columbus, Ohio, or something like that. And any screw up that we had, which there always, so nothing goes perfectly, whether it's in a show situation or a store installation, but any of those screw ups in this business, you get to take it all apart, you get to put it in a truck, and you get to send it home. And it's gone, it's done. Whatever went amiss is finished and done. And that was not the case with the retail business, with the fixturing business. And I think that was ultimately what was very unsatisfying, was that I didn't, like Alan says, you in this business you get to finish something, you put it in a truck, and that the experience of closing the last door, the door of the last truck, is something that I know we've all done. It's 3:30 in the morning, you're totally beat, but you get to close. Mm-hmm. You get to close the door at the end, and you get to shake everybody's hand, and you leave, and that day after, coming home, flying home, is a really remarkable, it's an interesting experience. Yeah. It's very liberating.
Yeah. Very few people get to feel that too. Yeah. You're right.
All right, cut one sec.
Get the boat. Our food's coming at 2. They're concerned that we are out serving.
The boat, let's do it. We got a boat.
Ready?
Right.
Ready?
Ready.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
FM days, Bill Graham days. $10 a day for 5 days. $50 a week is what I was making when I first started at FM. So it was like $43 and something after tax. And
$50 a week?
Huh?
Where was I? How did I come into that?
On the same tour.
Yeah.
I never
This
made
was a little
$50
before.
a week. That was a little before. Okay.
Yeah, a little before. But then at
$50.
Winterland, I'd make $50 a day.
See, he was getting paid more than me at Winterland, though.
Well, you were the new guy. You were the new guy.
So hold on one second. So FM Productions was Bill Graham's.
Cut.
It's got a new bird doo-doo on the window right behind you.
Jeez Louise, come on.
That's an act of God.
Props!
We're not on here yet.
Yep. Let's
Okay,
get
go
speed on a
All
momento.
We'll get the
Action.
Come when you're ready.
We're good.
Is
Going?
Billy director in the show?
All right, go ahead.
All right. This is great.
All right.
Bill Graham started FM Productions when he was doing Carousel Ballroom in Fillmore. And it's Millard Fillmore backwards. And he started it back then. There's Jay Drevers. God, who's the guy with the dark hair?
The guy with the dark hair? Steve Gagne?
No, Gagne did audio. There's another lighting guy. Maybe I'll think of him. But they'd show up. They'd show up with Truss and Licos and Fresnels. Pars weren't out yet.
Right.
And,
Licos and Fresnels.
But
No
that's how
Pars
FM
yet.
started. Because Bill Graham started it when he was doing Fillmore, and he needed a little small production branch to help him produce his shows.
Okay. So now you can.
And he was known as being incredibly cheap.
Well, how much? $50 a week?
50, yeah. When I started in the shop, and this was on Golden Gate before it moved over to 11th Street. It was $50 for the week, and if I worked 6 days or 5 days, it was $50.
No matter what.
And luckily, I got to go to Winterland and do shows, and on that payroll is about, I guess, $50 a day, because I remember making a lot more when I do Winterland shows.
So we're going to talk about your family and how.
Personal relationships doesn't necessarily need to be family.
Yeah, how do you deal with personal relationships when you're on the road? Tell me about that. I mean, whether you're
That's a
married or
whole
whether you got a
story.
girlfriend or whatever.
Well, actually, I've met my wife.
On the road.
No,
No?
she was in the industry. She was going to SF State, and she was tutoring a guy named David Kiley in math or calculus. And Kiley was driving rock and roll during the summer. And when Fred Fletcher, who was doing all of Bill Graham's trucking, decided to retire and do the stock market, Kiley wanted to start a trucking company. And he did. He started Roadshow Production, Roadshow Services, whatever it is,
So you met her.
through David Kiley. And Santana, I was tour manager with Santana at the time. This is late 70s. And
So how's your relationship then? When you're on the road, what's the deal?
she was used to it. She was used to it.
Because she'd been around.
Yeah, she'd been around rock and roll. She was used to people going away, David going away and coming back, and then after they broke up, and a couple years later we got together, she was just used to me going away.
What did she do for it?
Huh?
What did she do? What was she doing in the industry?
She started out doing the books for a road show, and then
Right,
at a
that's
certain
right.
point, David wanted to go on the road and be a production manager, tour manager. So she stayed and ran the company, ran the trucking company, and primarily an entertainment trucking company. So they do rock and roll tours, they do the opera, they do the symphony, San Francisco Symphony. So she was used to the whole routine.
All right, tell me. No, go ahead.
Yeah. And then it got to the point after we had kids, and the kids had the hardest adjustment to me going away because they didn't understand the industry. And then it was when I'd leave, it would take a couple days for the family to settle down and get into a routine, and then when I came back, it would just, everything would be in upheaval again, and then you start hearing, it's better when you're on the road.
Well, it's tough when you come home because at least when you're on the road, you know what you got to do. When you're at
Yeah.
home, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
There's no plan.
The worst, the lowest point I got to in that transition is that one time I came home from a tour, and I was sitting in my living room and smoking, and I actually took the ashtray because I actually took the ashtray, which had some stuff in it, and actually dumped it out on the carpet and ground the ashes into the carpet, because that's what I was used to doing in hotel rooms. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time and is still my wife, horrified, unbelievable. That was the low point of the coming off the road transition. Was dumping the ashes on the carpet and grinding, and without even thinking
Not
about
just
it,
dumping it, but
didn't
grinding it
faze
too,
me
yeah.
at all. It was the most normal thing I'd ever seen, because it was just, it was clean ash, and it went right in the carpet, and they were going to vacuum it up. So the maid was coming in.
Yeah, within the hour.
So
or two.
that was that was
Your partners?
maybe.
Oh my.
But that was it was really hard. I've been involved with the same woman since before I got in the industry. She moved to San Francisco with me when we were like in our early 20s, and within 2 or 3 years I had started touring, and at that point it was actually very good for our relationship. It was just at that point where, maybe you shouldn't be around so much, kind of thing. So it worked very good. But after a few years, it became there's obviously a lot of distractions on the road, and especially in the music industry. I think it's way different in the corporate industry than it is in the music industry. At least for me, I don't travel that much anymore. So the travel was sporadic, and it wasn't as long as a 6. And now tours are 2 years long.
Yeah, if you sign up for a big tour now, you're out for a year or two. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And it used to be.
Oh, it used to be 6 weeks. 8 weeks was a long
weeks.
tour.
Yeah, 10 weeks.
And so that's a lot. That's very different. And when my kids were born, I have 3 grown kids now. But when they were little, I didn't travel much. I worked mostly. At that point, I was working primarily in the Bay Area, and I spent a lot of time with them and would travel sporadically, and it really didn't. It was interesting for them. I was like, all of a sudden I'd be home in the daytime kind of thing, and that it was different, but it still could. It obviously throws your family life into disarray when you all of a sudden, one of the key people is gone for 2 weeks or a week or something like that.
And
So
I have to say, if I was a person who wanted to have a child at 20, this business would not be for me. It wouldn't be a good fit. I was somebody who grew up thinking I'd never have children.
Right.
And then got married when I was 40 and started a family. So
After all that stuff.
after all my touring,
Right.
well,
because as a tour manager, I was taking care of a lot of people who were having family issues and relationship issues because they were gone so much. They were home, they were gone. They were home, they were gone. So you come home, you reestablish the relationship, you get a rhythm, and you're gone.
And you're having to deal with all that.
Not so much. I mean, with corporate, I'm gone for a
No, I'm
week.
talking about then. You had to deal with. You
I
said you
was
had.
single through most of my rock and roll years. And right at the end, that's kind of what was part of my demise is I finally had an ongoing relationship
and a reason to go home.
and a reason to go
Because
home.
at some point it was just as good in New York as it was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So sometimes better.
you know.
Interesting enough, I got an inquiry when my kids were small, 5 and 6, 7, 8, something like that. I got an inquiry from a band to go out and do a tour. And I had to think about, how much money do I want and how long's the tour and what would it take for me to go. And I realized that the only way I was going to do it was to have my own bus. And that was because I was taking my family with me.
Yeah.
And I realized that would be the only way I'd be comfortable going on the road for 8, 10, I think that was a 12-week tour or something.
We did a proposal for a gig in Australia.
Oh, that's right, that
that
involved, yeah.
They were so flabbergasted.
Yeah,
Like,
we were taking that was it. I mean, that was bus tours and stuff.
corporate,
Yeah. So I wanted,
if you want us to go,
yeah,
This is what it's going to be.
I need my own
Year
bus.
and a half gig in Australia at a casino.
yeah.
And it's like, well, if you want us to go, there's a whole family involved. We're not leaving them behind. They're going to go, and then you're going to.
They're going to be with us.
Yeah.
And they just said, ooh, we can't.
Don't think.
Way over
Can't
the
do
top.
that.
Way over the top.
All right, I'm going to take a left turn here.
Okay.
Hold one sec. Let me just do a playback check.
I'm loving it.
Go.
All right,
we're
we're going to
rolling.
take a left turn here. Still rolling, right?
Yep.
Tell me, and I got to stop saying "tell me," but when something
can
goes,
edit it out.
when something goes wrong on the show, how do you deal with it? Somebody
Depends
comes
what
up
it
to
is.
you and says,
Depends what it is.
Well, give us an example. Tell us.
like,
what
give an
happened.
example of something that went wrong and how you dealt with it.
Stuff goes wrong on every show.
What do you do? I mean, anybody else panics, but you can't, right?
No, you can't. You have the end in sight. You know where you need to go, and you're looking at what's wrong and what needs to be done.
Anything
Tell
come
us a
to
story
mind?
that illustrates that.
Anything that come to mind that went just
Well, I've got a really bad one, but I'm not sure I want to talk about it. But I might as well. Let's go. Let's air some laundry.
go? Was I on the show?
No.
Yeah, it was your fault.
This was the McDougal Apple Europe show
We'll edit that out.
in Vegas. And I went with an assistant to do the site survey at a theater. And one of the few things that he had to do was give us specs on the fly system. Well, he didn't check more than one pipe in the fly system for the out pipe. So when we got there on site, we were installing. It was a pretty big show. And we're installing, and they fly the scrim out. 2 feet of it's hanging down below the borders. And I'm not the type that goes, he did it, because we both went on the survey. And so, okay. And so you figure out how it's going to impact the show that you're cutting 2 feet off the scrim. And you think through it, and we determined we could cut 2 feet off, we could still fly it in, everything was going to be fine. And the scenic shop took it back and chopped it and re-sewed it for us. I mean, that was one of the nastier ones.
So you didn't actually have to chop it in the air without taking it down, and
No.
so you actually had you
We
could
took
send it back
down,
to the scene shop,
sent it
because
to
a lot of
the-
times
yeah,
it's
sent it to A&D.
Right. A lot
They
of
took
times
care of it,
it's
although they
yeah,
didn't build it.
right
yeah.
there.
And, but man, my reputation took a hit on that job, really, really bad. So, and those things happen.
Of course.
Yeah. And usually they're much smaller and not quite as bad as that. And a lot of times it's other people messing up.
Right.
And so it's always easier to fix other people's problems.
Is that the fun part of it, or is that the exciting part of it? Is the challenge of solving a problem right now?
Oh yeah,
The clock's
absolutely.
ticking.
Oh, absolutely. That's
That's
it's
not the fun
oh.
part, but it's
I don't
part of
know.
it.
I think it is the fun part. It's the thing that gets.
adrenaline?
Mark,
Yeah, it's
you got to start that again. I think the fun part is solving a challenge, because I don't think we're going to have Dougie's voice on here.
Okay, go ahead.
Fun part.
I think the fun part of
I do think the fun part is having problems. It's not fun. Alan's right. It's not fun when it's happening, but it's what keeps
part
it.
of it.
Yeah, it's part of it. It's what
Part
keeps
of
it going. It's what you're there for. That's one of the things.
Right.
Is it's what you're there for. I think one of the things that I do and I think I actually, there's people in the industry who don't like my working style, because I tend to, when things are wrong, when things are bad, it's almost like I get calm, and it's almost like I don't care if the thing gets fixed or not. And I've run into a lot. There's a number of people who have chosen not to work with me after 1 or 2 jobs, because I don't seem to care enough, and I don't get concerned, and I don't get frantic. And it's very, and I get more so. I just get more even and less excited the worse things are. I don't yell. There's a lot of people in our business, I mean, you know this, I mean, who are yellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, who are yellers and
Well, we worked
screamers,
with
and that's
Yeller back in the 70s.
yeah,
you know?
exactly. So,
It
but
only takes you about that far.
exactly, and I learned, and that was Bill. He's talking about Bill Graham and the fact that that's how he got a lot of stuff done, and that is a style of what people do. But I'm like the opposite, and so what comes out of that is like, well, he doesn't give a
Have you noticed
shit.
how much he looks like Bill Graham?
You're pushing tight. You're pushing tight.
He really does.
I've been told that by a number of
Yeah,
people,
he
actually.
does.
Ray Etzler, who was the road manager for a long time for Santana, he used to give me a lot of shit, because I did 4 or 5 tours with Santana.
you were
He
Bill
was
Graham's
convinced
stunt
I was
double.
Bill Graham's nephew, and that the only reason I had my job was that I knew that I was Bill's relative.
You're
Yeah.
a family.
And he liked to tell me I was pretty useless. But it's the only reason I had the job was because I was a
Joking,
relative. But he was
Ray's-
joking.
Ray's
I loved Ray, and Ray.
Now, let
I
me
think
ask
Ray
you-
liked me.
Let me ask you this: when somebody says to you, "How do you guys make the magic happen?" Does anybody ever throw the word magic around? What's the magic in the show? How do you guys make the magic happen?
Well, it is
We
magic.
work with a lot of good creative people. I mean, we don't do it ourselves. It starts with concept, goes to design, and then it's all the people that help create it. And their tricks, turn off the lights.
That's a good one.
Everything looks good in the dark.
That is a good one. Yes.
It's excellent.
Yeah. But it's a group effort.
Well, tell me about the group effort. Tell me about working with the crew. Tell me about how you've got a limited amount of time. And you were talking about this before, how there's a lot of times, most times, where you show up with a group of people that you've never met before. How do you take a group of people that you've never met before and turn them into this?
That's where shepherding comes in.
The power of personality.
Yeah.
You have to be. What works for me. I'm sure everybody has their different style.
Right. But
And
shepherding, right?
yeah, it's shepherding. It's just like that. It's just like the spotted collie.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the audio guy who's going off here in this direction, and you got to run out there and turn him back in and get him going. And every show has one of those, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, every show's got somebody who's not with the program.
It used to be
So-
video exclusively, but they've gotten a lot better over the years. But video, I mean, for a while, in the late 90s, maybe it was just the video companies I was working with. They were in their own time zone.
Right. Didn't matter what.
Didn't matter what was going
what the
on with
time-
the rest of the world. It's like, what the hell is wrong with video?
Right.
What the fuck were they thinking?
Right.
Watching too much TV.
Right. Why are we taking so long to raster that projector? We should have been done hours ago.
Yeah.
What is the deal?
Yeah, what's the discussion?
So when was the last time you went to lunch? When was the last time you ate, video crew? Oh, I think it was yesterday. Is that okay? Is that bad? Yeah.
So even now, it's communication mainly, and it's how you communicate. It's you let other people know, because as a production manager at TD, you're working with the producer and the client, so you're really familiar. You better be very familiar with the show and what you need to accomplish. And other people come on with different levels of knowledge of what the program is, and so you just keep an eye out. And when you see one department or somebody not working as quickly as you think they should,
You're the babysitter.
because there's another department that's going to come up on their tail really quickly, and they need to do something, and the first department needs to get out of the way. You just go over and let them know, hey,
Right.
at 3 o'clock, so and so is going to be doing this. Oh, okay, thanks. And usually that's all it takes. And then when you run across the really bad apples, you just get rid of them.
And it is, and you are working with people you've never met. You've got to get to know these people. I mean, I'm not a person that goes to a social situation and becomes the life of the party or anything. I usually don't like those kinds of situations. I don't mingle very well and stuff. So this is my work is my opportunity to interact with people in a way where you actually have to get them to do things for you. And that's really my style, is that they're doing this for me because I'm a good, I'm a straightforward person. We're working all together, and if you mess up, you're really messing me up. And that works for me. I don't know that works for everybody, but my approach is generally a more personal, a good guy approach. I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to be the asshole. I hate that. I don't
you're
like.
Not going to get very far.
Well, I want people to like me. Yeah, but a lot of people. I'm in this business almost more than any other. I can't say that. There's a lot of businesses, but I've noticed a lot of people in this business go at it from directly the opposite thing. And my job, a lot of, especially production managers, technical directors, see their job as the asshole on site.
Which you're not.
And well, it doesn't work for me
Or
because
they disappear for hours.
they disappear for.
And that
But
doesn't
see,
work on an install.
right, and
You can't do that.
I can't sustain that. I can't sustain being a jerk. Although I can be a jerk, and I often am accused of being a jerk, but I can't sustain it. So it doesn't work for me over the course of 2 or 3 days.
Well, how do you disappear when you're in charge of the whole thing? That's what baffles me.
You go to
How
the
do you
production
walk off
office,
the
or you
set
go
and
to the
just
corner
bail?
of the room and you
I
start working
just-
on your next
What-
gig.
but that's
You
and that
just
is
disappearing. I've seen a lot of TVs do that.
I can't do it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm walking around all the time,
Yeah,
going
me
through
too.
all the departments. How's
Yeah.
it going? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Eyes on all of it. Once you walk off the set,
And you're
it's
adjusting.
like-
You're like a pilot, I guess, because you're adjusting the controls all the time. And if you just go over and sit down and do something else and ignore the show, you're going to get a surprise in 3 hours when you come back.
But it is a talent that we all have to do, because it's very seldom that you're only able to work and focus on one show. There's always, I mean, that's how we make money, is by having multiple shows. So you've always got some, or I do, there's always something else going on. And so
even right now.
even right now, I got my cell phone on vibrate. It's because you guys won't let me answer the phone. So it's, and how to do that kind of multitasking is actually have your eye 3 weeks down the road and still focus today is, I think, one of the challenges. And like Alan says, a lot of people just, once they get on site, they figure that job is done.
Yeah, you've got the schedule. Go to it.
Go to it.
But there's more to it than that, as you know.
Well, it never gets, I've done that. I've done exactly that. And it has never worked very well.
No, it won't work.
Yeah. I don't know. You luck out sometimes, and it works great.
Usually, once I hand the show off to the stage manager, then I start working on my other shows.
Right. Yeah. The gig's in.
Yeah.
You're flying the plane.
Alan,
I'm
I
out.
want you on headset. Huh?
What? What do you mean?
What for? It's
Yeah,
not-
exactly.
it's
That
not-
is interesting, because that's, as a stage manager, because I do that sometimes too. Having the production manager on is not important to me, because it's just another voice of authority, and it's mine now.
Right.
So I'm happy to, you call somebody in the headset and say, hey, go find the TD and get him to fix this, because, don't. Anyway, so that's. But yeah, you have to.
At that point, there's somebody making noise in the back hallway.
Yeah, then
Well, I was
call
going
him
to
up.
ask you, and we'll wrap it up with this.
I mean, we get to eat soon.
Yes, we're almost going to go to.
We get paid.
How do you feel when the show's up and running? What do you know? Mission accomplished. Or, I shouldn't say mission accomplished, because for us it's not until the gig is gone. But how do you feel
When we're
do
in
you feel
rehearsals?
Yeah, do you feel
When
a sense of
rehearsals, I can
comfort?
back off a little bit.
Do you feel
When we're in show, I still keep an eye on it, because you never know what's going to creep up, who's going to fuck up, what's going to break.
Do you feel, is there ever a sense of when you're backstage and the show is running and it's dark?
Yeah, it's a good feeling, especially on big shows. A lot of work. The harder it is to get the show installed, the more gratification I have. So,
Show's in, it's up,
Yeah.
it's running, we're backstage,
Yeah.
nice and cozy, right?
working with friends, or people you like at least.
Oh,
For the most part.
hopefully.
For the most part.
Okay.
You get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You get to enjoy it.
Is there anything that I missed? That you
And
wanna-
actually, what I really hate is when you do a week install and it's a 2-hour meeting, and then you got to drag it out. It's like, can't we just leave it up for a little while?
But isn't there then at the end that kind of, I think of it as kind of a suction thing. You work intensely with these people for a long time,
Yeah.
which is a week.
Yeah.
It's a 2-hour show, and you're out in the day, and all of a sudden it's gone. And there's kind of this like,
Yeah.
You
Well,
know-
Liberty Weekend was like that. Liberty Weekend was 7 weeks of hell. Well, not really hell, but 7 weeks of hard work in 96 to 105 degree weather, 90 degree humidity, giant stadium, and working with a labor pool, and nobody would talk about it then, but working with a labor pool that wasn't adequate. They didn't have enough people because we needed hundreds and hundreds of people. And then we did a 3-hour live TV of the program. And then we were supposed to drag it out. You want to talk about a letdown. It was amazing. Plus the fact that of a call of 200, 300 people the day after the shoot, only about 20 showed up. So we essentially took the day off. And it was the same way going in once we were down to the last 3-4 days trying to do more than 8 hours of work. It was really hard to get people to come back after dinner. So that was tough.
I think every show is different. I think some shows just never take off. So I don't think it's the length of the show, whether it's 2 hours or 3 days. Sometimes it goes on too long. I just think it's a rhythm that you get into on each individual show, which is what makes this way of making a living interesting. Is this? They're all slightly different. Some of them you would prefer, those 3-day shows, you would prefer that they were only 2-hour meetings so that you could get the hell out right now, because it's good. But I go back to the thing that I come back to in terms of the show being up goes back to rock and roll. And what I did in rock and roll was more support. You know, I was an electrician, so I didn't usually have a real key role in the show. And that was incredibly gratifying, to be able to just find my little corner and hunker down and watch my stuff and make sure that it didn't blow up. And to listen to some incredible music, and that I knew that I had a place. I knew that I belonged somewhere, that what I did was an integral part of what was going on, and that it meant a lot to a lot of people. And so I could really revel in that 2 hours of magic that was going on, while I just sat in my little spot and didn't do anything, just watched my stuff. But that was the most. That and closing the trucks was the most gratifying part. Corporate is the way I make my living, but it can't hold a candle to music. It just can't. So what music? And I don't know. I think it's kind of the same. And the reality of the thing is that I can't really do music anymore, because I can't deal with the personalities. I can't deal with the schedule. I can't deal with the insanity of that business. But I'm really happy that I got a chance to be part of it for a while. And it really taught me, that was my college education, was learning and doing that. And I've taken stuff from what I learned during that time that applies to everything I've done since. Remodeling my house, doing this retail business for a while. This is a unique, and we happened to come along, Al and I happened to come along at a time when this business was being invented.
Yeah.
And that part of it as well it's just really good to look back and go, I had a little part of that. I wasn't a big cheese. I didn't do anything revolutionary, but I had a little piece of something that everybody my kids' friends, when they tell them what I do for a living and what I did, it still resonates. It still resonates. It was a real special place to be.
We're starting to relive it too, with all the old road dogs who are still alive.
So pretty.
I agree with the music part too, especially when you go out on a tour and you see pretty much the same set list every night, and there's magical nights, and then there are nights when the band are tired, and you can tell when the band want to get laid because they play a lot better. Right. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on. I mean, and rock and roll, when we were doing rock and roll, it was 5 cities in a week. And I'm sure it still happens with a lot of smaller shows, but so you were working 20 hours a day. I mean, you're sleeping on the airplane.
For 8 weeks.
Sleeping in the sleeper of the trucks until that stopped.
For 8 weeks?
Yeah, 10 weeks.
Okay, 10
weeks.
10 weeks.
And he got $50 a day. You got
No, I got $325 a week.
I came back from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, 10 weeks. I had enough money to buy a color TV, and that was it. And I couldn't move for a couple weeks. So everything else, I mean, our schedule, we'd go in at night, we'd go in the morning, then we'd come back, And so it was between trying to stay awake and what you'd take to stay awake, and then drinking at the bar so you could go to sleep at 11 in the morning to be back at 8 at night. Yeah, there was no money left. When we
you'd
got
come home and you just like crash,
Oh,
right?
it was amazing. So it's a good thing I was 20.
It's a good thing I was 20. I love that. You guys all good? Did I forget anything, Sarah?
No,
Here, let me check.
The only thing I haven't really heard from Alan is like a particular story of what a real highlight.
Great.
Actually, you know, my years touring with Santana, I really enjoyed.
Are we rolling
We're
right
rolling.
now?
We're rolling.
All right, so say that again.
yeah,
My
but-
years with Santana.
I really enjoyed my years working with the Santana band. The first tour I did with them was when Santana opened for Eric Clapton in '75. It was a month, and then a couple weeks off, and then another month. And then after that, one of the roadies left. And so I got the call to work with them, and then we went off to New Zealand, Australia, and Japan. Spent a month in Japan. It was wonderful. 2 weeks in Australia, jogging. I remember jogging in Adelaide and Melbourne and stuff. Because you wake up at 5 in the morning. I remember jogging in Tokyo before the city really got too busy. You'd jog around the palace and stuff. And go off and do the shows. And just have a great time. And good group of people. You know, Ray Etzler, who we mentioned earlier, was the manager with them, co-manager with Bill Graham. He started out flipping burgers at Fillmore, and went on to work for Bill Graham Management and work with Santana. And one of my favorite concerts was in the south of France in an old Roman bullfighting ring, and just. I remember Carlos playing Europa, I think, and the lights, the dust. There was a dust cleanup from this arena, and then the lights just lit it up. It was great. It was beautiful. You know, it was a warm night, summer night.
Magic moment.
Oh yeah, it was really magic for me. And I'm walking in and out of these old tunnels, and coming out on a hill. It was a very small arena, but that was great. Loved touring in Japan. It was good. But I also, one of the things I really, really appreciated by being in the right place at the right time is my first tour was Bob Dylan and the band. When Bob Dylan came back after 8 years, you know, his 8-year hiatus. And then I went to Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and then I went to George Harrison. That was 1974. So, you know, it's kind of like when Silicon Valley was going with computers. It was kind of like, that's their age, and this was my age. Rock and roll was going on. Vietnam War was going on at the beginning of it, which is interesting because if the draft hadn't ended the year that it ended, I probably wouldn't have done all of this.
You would have been in now?
Because the next year they had the draft, but they didn't draft anybody. They held the draft. And I was low enough. I was like 130 something. I would have been drafted, which meant I would have gone to Canada.
You would have missed all this.
And I would have missed all this. So I'm glad it didn't happen.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great. Great times. Great memories.
I'm all done.
And I got off the
Unless you
road
guys have
soon enough.
One like little soundbite for like the future, or maybe what's next.
What do you look for? What are you looking forward to? Yeah,
Not a
after
story, just one little like thought, or
after all you've been through, what do you look forward to now?
or what do you think the future holds? Or
What do you think the
something
future
forward
holds?
thinking.
What am I? You know, my daughter's 10 and my boys are 8. So there is no retirement. So I'm hoping that my future continues along as well as my past has. And that I'll be able to enjoy working for many years to come because they're not even close to college age yet. So, and that's one of the things about working in the industry, you know, liking it. Is that I can say, okay, I'm going to be in my 60s, and knock on wood, people still hire me. I'm still going to enjoy it.
What about you? What about you, Mark?
We're not, my kids are older. I'm a little older than he is. My kids are definitely older, so they're all just getting ready. One's graduating from college now, one's already out, one's in the midst of it. I'm trying to figure out what the next few years are like. I don't have a clue. frankly don't have a clue. And there's nothing particular that I'm looking forward. I don't have a little hideaway somewhere where I'm going to go do that. So I'm having fun right now when I'm not working. I would love to not work. If I could stop working right now, in a heartbeat. I find that I'm not as inspired, and I don't enjoy work as much as I have in the past. But what I also find is that I know how to do what I do so well. I find myself in instances where I will get close to a show and will have this huge anxiety attack that I've just completely messed it up. That this is oh my God, I'm gonna be found out that I have screwed it up. This is it. I have done it. And I'll focus for an afternoon. Literally, an afternoon is all it takes. I'll focus. I'll look at my little lists. I'll go through all the stuff, make 2 phone calls of the things I actually did forget, and realize I've got it all together. And I can show up in 2 days to lead, hundreds of thousands of dollars of labor and equipment, all this kind of stuff, and that it's going to be just fine. So I worry sometimes about getting lazy. And I also work with a guy who's very, very detail oriented. And so compared to him,
versus my inertia.
yeah, he has inertia, but once he gets going, he's very detailed. And I'm a slacker. It's not that I don't do stuff, but it's all I'm much more late. I'm much more laissez-faire in what goes on. And as I get older, sometimes I have, as I said, I have these things. Oh shit! Oh my God! It's like, oh, I have a dream. I have an ongoing dream. I haven't had it for a while, which is a good sign. But I have an ongoing dream. In 1978, I did a Commodores tour, and I was 28 years old. First time I was ever a production manager, and I was given the job of selling a set and a road production, lighting, sound, and a set, a huge, ugly ass set, to the Commodores. 28 years old, had never done anything like this before, and was going back and forth. Spent 2 months selling it to the band. So over my head. I was talking to lawyers. I was negotiating with promoters. Completely over my head. And the tour didn't start well. Kind of went south immediately, and I had to go out and rescue it. I would rescue it. If Downey hears that, he'll freak.
Don't play it.
Well, you can play it back. He'll just yell it. He'll call me up. But I ended up going out for about 4 months with this tour because the production management team, which was another group, fell apart. So I went on forever. This tour was and it's why I had to actually take a leave of absence. I was completely cooked.
Done after that, yeah.
So for years, and that was 1978, until this day, I haven't had a dream like this for a couple of years. I have a dream where I take this Commodore show, which is this huge show, and I find myself in the basement. Sometimes it's the basement of somebody's house. Sometimes it's the basement of a warehouse, or a basement of a club, or it's a club, something like that. But I find myself in a basement with like an 8-foot ceiling, like 7'6" or something. And my job.
This is the production manager's nightmare. Slow motion thing.
Exactly. Right? So I find
a show in somebody's basement.
Exactly. And I find myself, I have to put the Commodore show into this basement. And it's nothing will fit. I mean, the plexiglass towers that were had on the thing were 14, 15 feet tall.
Ball coming in on
this.
This.
I mean, and I find myself in this place, and I don't know what to do. It's like, oh my God, this is a disaster. And I've had this dream.
Well, and hopefully you wake
numerous
up
times.
It's time for
Well, yeah, but I've had this dream a couple of times. Yeah, it was terrible. I've had this dream a couple of times where I've had 2 days of utter confusion and depression after having this dream. because it was so profound and so real. And it was based on that thing. And anyway, that's I haven't had it for a while, so hopefully I'm getting some
I wasn't
beyond
on
that
it,
a
but
little.
I've heard it from.
Oh,
Jim
horrible.
and From Jim.
Oh,
Yeah.
just a terrible, terrible
Let's
tour.
wrap. We gotta eat.
Anyway,
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well done.
Huh?
That was fucking great, guys. That was very cool.